is collected from the place of origin. It is called primary, secondary, or both primary or secondary. Let me see. Okay, how many of you have answered? Let me check. Okay, yeah, yes, yes, all of you are right. The data which are collected from the place of origin is called as primary data, right? Okay, very good. Then question number 4. Sources of data collected and compiled by others is called what? Sources of data collected and compiled by others. This is called primary data, secondary data, both, or none of these. Sources of data collection that is compiled by others is called what? Okay. Yes. Yes, everyone is correct that I discussed. Suppose or data is collected or compiled by any other person. I am again collecting the same data that is called secondary data. So here the same thing is given. Source of data collected and compiled by others is called secondary data, right? So this is the correct one, secondary data. So let me take this one, secondary data. So this was primary data, right? So next, which of the following is an example of primary data? That means the data stored in book, the data stored in journal, the data stored in newspaper, or the census report. Which one of the following contains primary data? You know what is primary data? That should be original one. That shouldn't be compiled by any other person. The first hand data is called primary data. So which one will be the primary data here? Book, journal, newspaper, or census report? Okay. Try to answer. Okay. All others, try to answer. The data present in a book, or the data present in a journal, or the data present in newspaper, or the data that is collected through census that is present in the census report. Which one is the primary data? Here, the primary data is the census report because this data, the data present here, if I'm collecting the census report, I have to go door by door to collect the data. And in case of book, in case of journal, in case of newspaper, anyone has collected the data that is already published, and we are just reading the data. We are just taking the data for our context. So which one will be the primary data? Census report, right? So how many of you have answered the right one? Let's check. Only one. Yusuf. Very good. Okay. 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 Three of you have answered. Okay. Okay. Right. This is the census report. Right. Very good, everyone. Next, see. Which of the following is an example of secondary data? Which of the following is an example of secondary data? Whether the RBI, Reserve Bank of India, that is RBI bulletin, or government publications, or any committee commissions data that is that is collected by any committee or commissions. So which of these following are which secondary data, right? So try to answer. Okay. So here secondary data that is not collected originally. That means a person by himself or by herself has not gone to that place, but the person is collecting the already compiled data is called the secondary data. So the RBI bulletin consists of the data that is previously collected by someone, government publication, committee, commissions. They contain the data collected by someone. Okay, so all the above are the example of secondary data, right? So how many of you have answered? Yeah, yes, very good. Okay, very nice. Next, see, which of the following is true about secondary data? If we consider the secondary data, which of the following is true? Secondary data must be suitable, must be reliable, must be adequate, or all the above. See, that means secondary data that we are collecting should be as per our requirements, that is suitable one. The secondary data should be reliable one, should be correct one, and the secondary data should be adequate. That means it should be consistent one. Right? So whether any of the following option is true or all the above are true. Okay. See the question and try to answer it quickly. Okay. So here, let me check who have answered. Okay, okay, very good, very good. All of the above, right? So secondary data should be suitable one as per our requirements, should be reliable, should be a proper one. That means appropriate one. Okay, so all the above characteristics should be there in the secondary data. Then coming to question number 10, which of the following is a method of collecting primary data? So if we want to collect the primary data, which of the following method is suitable? Observation method, that means we are observing something and we are collecting the data. We are doing interview of a few people to collect the data. We are preparing questionnaire or schedule method to gather the information about something or from someone. Okay, so any of the method is true or all the above methods are can be used for the collecting of primary data. Just answer the question. Yusuf has answered C, option C. Okay. All others, which is a method of collecting primary data? Whether observation method, interview method, or you want to prepare the questionnaire, or all the above methods are suitable for collecting the primary data. These questions are to reflect that how much you have understood. Okay, so let's check your answers. Okay, D. Okay, C. Here in question number 10, the correct answer is all the above. That is option number D. Why? Because primary data is the first hand data. We have to go by our own to the spot and we have to collect the data. The data should be original one. So that should be primary data. So whenever we observe something, suppose I want to prepare a thing. So I have to observe that. After observing, I will just get the data that these are the characteristics, these are the properties, these are the methods I should apply to work to do my work. So all the things that I want to observe, I have to observe to collect the data. So I will present on that spot and I myself will observe the data. So that is the observation method. So observation method is the method of collecting the original data. So by observing, you can collect the original data. So it is also one of the method of collecting primary data. Interview method means you are doing interview of a person, of a group of person to collect the data. So whenever you will interview the person or group of person, you will collect the original data. Okay, so that is not biased by anyone. So you will collect the original data. So that is called the interview method. So this is also one of the method of primary data collection. Questionnaire and schedule method means you are preparing a questionnaire where we are putting the questions that is required to collect the to gather the data, and you are giving the questionnaires to the persons from where you want to collect the data. So whatever the data you will get, that will be the original one. So all these methods belong to the primary data collection methods, right? So the correct answer is option number D. Okay, see. One more example, primary data can be collected through. Question number, this question, primary data can be collected through experiment, through survey, both of the above, or these methods are not suitable. So how primary data can be collected? See, primary data, you know, the first hand data. Okay. So when you do the experiment, you will collect, you will get the result. That is the original one, right? When you do the survey, you will ask the questions to the visitors or to the audience, and you will get the original data. Whatever they will write, you will get that data. That is not biased by anyone. So when you will collect the data through experiment, through survey, both the are the primary data. So here the correct option is option number C, both of these, right? Then come to, this is very easy question, that primary data can be collected by. See, primary data can be collected by the researcher, that means the person who is trying to collect the data, the person who is trying to analyze the data. So that person himself or herself will collect the data. So for here, primary data can be collected by the researcher himself. Okay. Next, the unorganized data. This is very, very easy question. The unorganized data, that is called raw data. Okay, this is raw data, RAW, raw data. And organized data is called the information. You know all these things. That is very. These two questions are very easy, right? The unorganized data is called raw data, and the organized data is called information. Okay. Okay. So try to answer this. Primary data is, whether primary data is always collected before secondary data, or primary data is collected for a specific purpose, or the information that already exists is called primary data, or the data collected for other purpose is called primary data. So what will be the answer of this? This is a tricky question, right? So just try to answer what is primary data from the above options. Okay. See. Which question you are answering, Mohammed? Question number 30. Okay, primary data is what? Is always collected before secondary data or collected for the specific purpose. So everyone try to answer and do it quickly so that we can start the other topics. Yes, yes. Okay, sure. Question number A. C. Primary data. The correct option for this question is question option B, right? Collected for a specific purpose at hand. So at hand means at the first hand. So primary data is the data researcher, I want to find something, I can consider, I can take the primary data or I can take the secondary data. So if I prefer the secondary data, so in this case secondary data is collected for me before the primary data. Okay, so I cannot say always that always the primary data is collected for before secondary data for the researcher or for the analyzer, right? So primary data or secondary data, that may be any kind of data, but that is collected for a specific purpose. So here primary data is what? It should be collected for specific purpose. So here the correct answer is option number C. That means primary data is collected for specific purpose. So the correct answer is B. See, it generally it happens if in a MCQ you have you just find out that two or three questions are very much similar. Then you have to go with the most appropriate answer, right? So for primary data, those who are answering A, let I am an analyzer, I am a researcher, I want to do a study, I want to do an experiment, and I prefer the secondary data. So here, for my case, secondary data is collected before the primary data. So we cannot say that always a primary data is collected before the secondary data. But that can be primary data, that can be secondary data. Everything is collected for a specific purpose. So here in this case, primary data, the correct option is option B, collected for a specific purpose. The most appropriate answer, right? Okay. Then see about question number this 33. Which of the following is the main point of difference between primary and secondary data? From the options given below, what are the main points that differentiate primary and secondary data? Right? So read the options. The secondary data is costlier and more time consuming in comparison to the primary data. Is it correct? Or secondary data is always original, but primary data is not. Whether it is correct, or the primary data is more reliable than the secondary data because it is collected directly by the respondent, directly from the respondents. Okay. So which of the following options, four options, is the best difference between primary and secondary data? Okay, try to answer. Here you can get the better difference between primary and secondary data. See, whenever, let me explain the things. Whenever we collect the primary data, the primary data should be original. That means it is generally original because we directly collect the data. Going into that spot, we interact directly with the persons to collect the data. So that is the original one. But the secondary data that is collected by someone else, we do not know how accuracy, what is the accuracy level in that data. So we cannot say the secondary data is correct or accurate one. We do not provide the guarantee. But the primary data is a original one, right? So whenever we go with the secondary data is not costlier, right? Because it is collected already by someone, it is stored at any place, we are just collecting the data, so it is not time consuming at all. Collecting the secondary data is not time consuming because it is already stored, it is already collected by someone. We are not wasting our time, we are not collecting the secondary data, it is already stored, we are just searching or surfing the internet, we are just looking into the website, we are just looking into the social media to collect the data, so it is not at all time consuming in comparison to the primary data. So here the correct answer is option number 3. That means C. The primary data is more reliable because we by ourselves go to the particular place, interact with the persons to collect the data. That means as we directly collect the data from the respondent, so primary data is much more reliable than the secondary data. So the correct option is option number C. So how many of you have responded? Let me check. Okay. Okay. Nice. Very good. Very good. Okay. So these are the things that you have to explain ETL tools. If this kind of question comes, you can explain ETL tool, that is equation technique, normalization, everything. Those were the data reduction techniques that I explained yesterday, right? And you can also just outline two basic difference between data lake and data warehouse, right? So this is also a repository. These two are the repository. Then what is the basic difference between data lake and data warehouse? I think now you can explain the difference. What are the differences that lie between data lake and data warehouse? I think up to these three questions, you are very much sure that you will answer. And there are how many types of data depending on the variety in availability. That means whenever we collect data from various sources, there are variety of data. So depending upon the variety of the availability, how many types of data are there? Try to answer this one. Okay. Those who are writing three. Uh, okay. So are you sure about this? Okay. That variety of these are the following examples of quantitative data that I explained. What is the difference between quantitative, qualitative data? What are the characteristics, right? So from the above diagram, you can also know the type quantitative, qualitative that I explained and the various categories. Here, all these things I explained through the examples, right? The discrete value or discrete data, continuous data, these are the qualitative. That means breed, color, energy of a dog, number of correct answers if you will give, that is the discrete one, right? Number of goals if you will give, that is the discrete one, right? That means you have scored two goals, which is the discrete one, right? It is not any decimal points. Number of correct answers you have answered, suppose you have answered three correct answers, so this is the discrete one, this is the whole number, right? So all these things I have explained. So depending upon these, so try to answer this question number 2, because question number 1 is very easy, right? Which one is the example of quantitative data, and I'm very sure you can directly answer the example of quantitative data, right? So try to answer this question number 2. What is there? If we want to analyze the why behind the customer choice, which kind of data is that? Suppose a customer has given choice to someone, choice to let you have rated a session to 5. Okay, so why the we have to analyze why behind the customer's choice, why the customer has given choice of that kind, why the customer has given preference of that kind. So when you will analyze the why behind the customer choice, which kind of data that is, quantitative, qualitative, or either or none of the above. Okay, let me check. See, are you getting my points? See, for example, suppose I am explaining through an example. Let I asked you, how is my session? Rate my session. Okay, so you suppose you rated 5 to my session. Okay, you rated 5 to my session or 10 to my session. So, if I will ask why you have rated me 5 or you have rated me 10 for my session, then what will you explain? What will you answer? Okay, so whether you will say that your explanation is good, or whether you will say your means the presentation is good, or whether you will say that your concept is very clear. Okay, so all these things you will explain to me that for this region, for this purpose, I rated your session to 5. Okay, so when I asked you why you did this, you answered me. So the type of answer you provided, that is which kind of answer, that means the data that you provide to me is which kind of data, whether it is quantitative or qualitative. Yes, did you understand? This is the quality. Yes, qualitative data, right? If you understood my example, you can easily answer the question that the why behind the customer choice is the qualitative data that I explained now. That I asked why did the rate my session, okay, or rate my class, and you rated my class to 10, the maximum one. Suppose for example I am taking, you rated my session to 10. So when I asked you why did you rate my session, or why did you rate my class to 10, then you will explain me that for this, these are the reasons, these are the purposes. For this one, I rated your session to this much. So whenever you explain to me, that explanation was in descriptive form, right? So explanation was in qualitative data, right? So that's why the why, when I asked you why you did this, the why behind the customer preference is qualitative data. Okay, so here the option, the correct option of this is qualitative data, the option number B, right? So everyone, did you understand this question? Yes, quality matters more to the customers. Okay. Okay. Okay, means this was a kind of tricky question, that these questions that I just explained you, all the questions are just you can use that for the understanding purpose, that how much you have understood, right? Okay, so question number 3 is very easy. The example of qualitative data, you can easily say the feedback rating 1 to 5. This is quantitative. Age of a student, that is quantitative. Temperature is quantitative. And marital status, that is the qualitative data, right? So it is not in numerical form. So this first question and last question was very easy, and question number 2 was uh, tricky one, right? So I think you all have understood this one. Okay, okay, right. Next, see. This we have completed. Then comes, okay. Next come to sampling, right? See, what is sampling? Sampling means the process by which we collect samples from the entire data set, that is called sampling, right? So we have a data set, huge amount of data set, and from the huge amount we are collecting few data sets, right? So this data set is called a sample, and the process of collecting sample from the huge data set is called the method sampling, right? So the entire data set is called population. Here you can see the population. Population is what? It is the entire data set from which we collect the sample. And sample is what? If you sample means a specific group, of individuals, that means a smaller group that is collected from the entire data set. Here this is the example, this is the diagram, this is the entire target population. A huge amount of data set is there, and from the data set we are just targeting, we are just collecting this. So this is sample and this is the target population or the target data source, right? So the sampling method, that means the process of collecting samples from the entire data set, is of two types. So that is probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So what is the meaning of probability sampling here? So if you are collecting sample in a random manner, that is called probability sampling. That means suppose a bucket is there and number and a few numbers of balls are there, and you are randomly choosing any ball, that is called probability sampling. There is a random selection. So there is, that means all the balls in the bucket have equal chance of being selected, right? So in case of probability sampling, it involves the random selection where we can collect the sample randomly from the data set. And what about non-probability sampling? If there is non-random selection of the sampling, that means we are not randomly selecting the sampling, we are selecting the samples basing upon our requirement, basing upon our convenience. That means there is something biasness in selecting the sample. So that is called non-probability sampling. That means if there is a bucket and balls are there, and we have to collect five black balls. So if we are randomly choosing the balls, that is called probability sampling. If we are not randomly choosing, we are only choosing the black balls, we have to choose five black balls. So that is called non-probability sampling. So here in case of probability sampling, there is no biasness because we do not know which data is to be selected. We are randomly choosing the data. But in case of non-probability sampling, there is the biasness. We choose the data, we choose the sample as per our need, as per our convenience, the as per the purpose that for what we are collecting the sample. So this is the basic difference between probability and non-probability sampling, right? So up to this, the two or three lines I explained. Any doubt regarding what is sampling? What are the types of sampling? The basic types are probability and non-probability sampling. So up to this, any doubt? Anything you want to ask me?
I need more explanation about
Yes, sure.
non-probability sampling.
Okay, sure. No issue. Okay. See. So are you clear about population and sample? Population and sample? Population and sample. See, population means the entire data set. That means if I want to collect the data from entire India, that means India is the population, right? So suppose from India, I am selecting only Uttar Pradesh. It is a state, right? So that Uttar Pradesh, though, if I'm collecting data from only Uttar Pradesh, from entire India, the Uttar Pradesh now, for my case, it is the sample and entire India is the population. So population means what? It is the entire data set that exists. This is the population one. And sample means the smaller data set that is extracted from the entire data set for the study purpose, right? So whenever we perform our study, we perform our experiment or analysis, we always try on the sample instead of the population. Okay, so suppose I am a researcher or I am a medical specialist, I have invented a drug, right? A drug or medicine. So before implementing my drug or before applying my drug to the entire country, so I should choose few people, few personnel, few individuals upon which I will apply my drug. So if it is successful, then only I can apply to the entire population. So whenever we do experiment or do analysis purpose, we always do the analysis on the sample instead of the population. Okay. So whenever we collect a sample, okay, So sample from the entire population, the collection is of two types. That means we can collect the sample randomly or we can collect the sample non-randomly, right? So suppose there is 100 data set is given and you are told that collect 5 data set. So you will randomly choose five. Okay, the five data set. That means suppose we are applying on the people in a country. So the you when you will randomly choose the data, so you can get all female or you can get all male or you can get female or male at equal proportion or at a different proportion. That means you are randomly choosing. You are not sure that how many male or how many female will be selected as the population. You are randomly choosing. You are randomly choosing. So the all the data or all the individuals you will choose from the entire data set, that all will be female or all will be male, or there will be few female or most of the individual will be male. So that can be anything, right? That is called probability. Non-probability means you are not choosing randomly. You are sure before selecting the sample that you have to collect this much from this one, from this set. Okay, so you are predefined your mind that I need, suppose for example, ki I have to collect 10 white balls, and you are given a place where it is there are 100 more than 100 bulbs kept of different colors, but you need only 10 white balls. So you will choose only 10, and the balls should be white. You will not randomly pick out the balls from the place that you will choose. You will just pick out the balls of means pick out the white balls only. Okay? So you won't choose the black balls, you won't choose the blue balls, you will just pick the white balls choosing. So this is the judgmental. That means you are being judgmental at that time. You are judging that which kind of data you need, and you are focusing on that kind of data only to collect the sample. But in case of probability sampling, you are not focused. Your aim is to collect the data, that data can be of anything. Okay, so you are randomly choosing the balls, you are randomly choosing the persons as the sample. You are not previously means set your mind that I need five female or I need five male or I need 10 balls only white color. So you are not predefined. This is not predefined. So you are randomly choosing. The data can be of anything. So that is called probability. If you have selected previously that you need this one particularly, so you will choose or you will focus on that thing. Okay, so that is not the random one. You will choose as per your convenience, as per your judgment, that you have judged that this is good. That means I will collect that one. So you will not randomly choose the good and bad one, right? So this is the basic difference between the probability and non-probability sampling. So we'll just explain many more things regarding all those two. See,
It is
sample I
very
just
clear.
okay. Thank you so much. So this is sample that I already told, the small group of members collected from population, right? So this is called target population because we are targeting that population to collect the sample. So the sample that we collected can be broad or can be narrow, right? So broad means suppose for example in our college, in our country, you are instructed to collect the sample of all the adult population, right? So whenever you collect the sample, it will be broad because you are considering the sample from the entire country, the adult population of entire country. So it will be the sample will be of broad category. All the adult population you have to consider. But if you are instructed to focus on the customers or focus on the female customers or male customers of your company, then you will have a limited one. Okay, you will just only focus on the female customers. There may be few customers of your company, of your product that your company is means manufacturing. So in that case, the sample is narrow, right? So one more thing is that the important thing that in case of population, right? In case of population, when you are collecting sample, there is sampling bias. So what is the meaning of bias? Bias is anything that I explained earlier also. Bias is anything that affect badly to your result. That means if there is bias, if there is anomaly in your data collection, you cannot get the required, you cannot get the proper data, right? So if you know that sample is collected from the population, if the population is very large, it is demographically mixed, various kind of geographically dispersed population is there, and whenever you collect data from this kind of population, that means you are selecting samples from this kind of population, it doesn't always mean that you will get the proper sample that you generally, that you actually need, because the population is very complex, very large, every demography is mixed there. So it may happen that whatever the samples you need, you actually need for your data analysis purpose, the sample does not meet that quality. Okay, so if the sample doesn't meet that quality, whenever we apply your analysis on the sample, you may not get the proper result. So this is called sampling bias. So in case of sampling that we collect, there may happen the sampling bias in the sample collection, right? Okay, see. Okay, up to this clear, no doubt at all, I think. Okay, let's see. Uh, Next, the types of probability sampling. Probability sampling means I just explained that there is the random selection. That means each and every member in the data set gets the equal chance of being selected. That means I can choose anyone. So whenever I am collecting data from the data set, in the data set, whatever the data should be there, every data has the equal chance of being selected. Okay, so that is the probability sampling. So probability sampling is of generally four types, that is simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified and cluster sampling. So generally question is asked the differentiate the probability or non-probability sampling or explain the various probability sampling methodology. So these are the four probability sampling methodologies, that is simple random sampling, systematic, stratified and cluster. See, here what happens in case of probability simple random sampling, this is one of the category of probability sampling. So here what happens, this is the entire population, right? So this is the entire population. So here in case of simple random sampling, we randomly select few people that will form a sample. Let this population has 100 people and we need only 4, so we will randomly select. That means let I select this person, let I select this person, let I this, and these persons are selected. So whenever I select a sample through simple random sampling, any person or any individual or any data that is present in the population has equal chance of being selected. So I can choose any, because I need 4 data to be present in a sample. So any individual or any data from the entire population can be chosen. So this is called simple random sampling, right? Next, next is called systematic sampling. See, what is the meaning of systematic sampling? So this is also a part of probability sampling where there is the randomness of collecting the sample. Okay, so how it can be done? See, in case of systematic sampling, the first data is collected at random. Right, this is the entire population. Try to understand the difference. This is the entire population. The first data is collected at random. Okay, so let I collected the first data. So after collecting the first data, I told that I have to choose or I have to collect the data that is present at nth position or the data present at the third position. Okay, that data present in the third position. That means I choose a regular interval for collecting the sample, right? So let from the above population, I randomly choose this first one, first data. Then I told that every third person will be collected as sample. So I will collect this one, this data, I will collect this data, I will collect this data. That means when I just formed a sample, I followed a systematic procedure for collecting the sample. First data will be collected at random, then I will choose a regular interval or a systematic interval, that every data at the nth position, that nth element can be of anything, right? So we can choose the third element, we can choose the fourth element, we can choose the fifth element. So the whatever the data present at that interval will be chosen as the sample, right? So this is called systematic sampling. That means, for example, for the clarification purpose, I can say, let this is a line. Okay, so people are standing here in a line, so let 10 persons are there. So first of all, in case of systematic sampling, I have to choose a data, or I have to choose a person at random. So let I choose this second one. Okay, this person. Then I told I will choose the data, or I will choose the person that those stand at the second position. Okay, so nth element means second position. Let the n is 2. So the data or the people present at the second position I have to choose. So I will choose this one, then I will choose this one, then I will choose this one. So the data or the people present at the nth interval, or the people present at the second position, will be chosen as the sample. Okay, so this is called systematic sampling. So I have to collect sample in a systematic manner as at a particular interval. Okay, so this is the important one. This is at a regular interval I have to collect the data to form the sample. Okay, so next is called stratified sampling. See, stratified sampling means what? In case of stratified sampling, the entire population is divided into strata, right? Strata means group. So the data present in a group has same feature or same characteristics, right? That means the data present in a strata. Here in this case, in our example, we have three strata: strata 1, strata 2, and strata 3. That means strata means group. So in case of stratified sampling, we have to divide the entire population into strata, and each strata is of homogeneous data items. That means all the data present in this strata are of homogeneous, and the data present in this strata are of homogeneous, and the data present in this strata are homogeneous, right? So whenever I want to collect the sample, I will take few data from this strata, I will take few data from this strata, and I will take few data from this strata. So in this way I will utilize all strata to collect the sample. So this is called stratified sampling, right? Next, the last one is called cluster sampling. Cluster sampling and stratified sampling are very similar. Cluster sampling means same. The entire data set is divided into clusters. There will say it is divided into strata. Here will say it is divided into cluster. Cluster is group, strata is also group. So what is the basic difference between cluster sampling and stratified sampling? Just remember, just listen carefully, that in case of stratified sampling, the entire population is divided into strata, and we have to collect data from each strata to form the sample. But in case of cluster sampling, if we have larger population, okay, we have larger population, the population is very large, then we will divide the population into clusters. Okay, so we have four clusters here, four clusters. This is cluster 3 and cluster 4. So if I want to collect sample, I will choose any one of the cluster to collect the sample. But in case of stratified sampling, we were taking data from each of the clusters, each of the stratas. Okay, but in case of cluster sampling, we divided the data set into clusters because the data set was very large. So we divided, and we choose only one cluster to collect the data that will be treated as sample. We do not consider all the cluster to collect sample, like stratified sampling. We collect only one cluster. Among the clusters, we choose any one cluster and collect data that will be treated as sample. So this is the basic difference between stratified sampling and cluster sampling. Okay. Okay, let me check up to this. Any doubt? probability sampling and types. Okay. Are you sure everyone is getting my points that I explained? What is sampling? What is population? What are the methods of sampling? Broadly categorized into how many types? And what are the types of probability sampling? The various types, that is simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. So all of you are clear about this? Okay. Try to be very much clear about stratified and cluster sampling, because generally question is asked regarding what is stratified and what is a cluster sampling, because these 2 points are very much similar. In both the cases we are dividing into clusters, we are dividing into stratas, means groups. Okay, so if we are dividing into groups in both the cases, then what is the basic difference? The basic difference lies in two cases, that in case of stratified sampling, the data set is not very large, but in case of cluster sampling the data set is very large. So when in stratified sampling we divide the entire data set into strata, and we have to consider all the strata to take the sample. That means we select a sample, the individuals of a sample from all the strata. But in case of cluster sampling, we divide the entire data set into clusters, but we do not consider data from all the clusters. We consider only one cluster, and from that cluster we collect data that is treated as sample. Okay, so these two is the basic difference between stratified and cluster sampling. So I'm just explaining the basic thing, the gist, that you should know what is uh, what is there in the sampling, in probability sampling, right? Okay. See, one more announcement, that the class, we have the class on day after tomorrow, right? So tomorrow we do not have class, and we have class on day after tomorrow. And I think the timing of day after tomorrow class should be changed, and I want to take class from 3 to 4:30. Let me write, that is 3 to 4:30 IST. Okay. So the day after tomorrow class. Is it suitable? 3 to 4:30 IST. Mhm. Please just answer me. Is it a suitable time? 3 to 4:30. The day after tomorrow class, I want to schedule from 3 to 4:30. Okay. So the link will be same, and join at 3.
So ma,
Okay.
we have to convert it to our time. So that three we have to convert. Is it like 1 hour less than what we have normally do as today, or as how?
Means what do you want to say? That it will be of 1 hour and 30 minutes of class, right? So we'll continue from 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. So we'll just end at 4:13. So it will be 1 hour 30 minutes of class. Okay. So it will be fine. So everyone in the day after tomorrow class, just try to join on time. So it will start at 3 o'clock, right? Okay. So
Okay.
the next, okay. So next the things that I want to explain is
It is going to be 10:30 Nigerian time.
okay. This is the IST. That means Indian Standard Time is 3 to 4:30. So what
Yes,
will be the
Nigerian
time
time it
there?
will be, yeah, Nigerian time it will be 10:30 a.m.
10:30.
10:30
Okay, right.
a.m.
It's fine. It's the morning time, right?
Yes.
Yes. The timing is very good. Okay. No issue at all at that time.
Yes, no issue. It is okay.
Okay.
Very
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Fine. 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 Okay. Fine. Okay. So see. No, no. Tomorrow we do not have class. Na, you see the schedule that is shared. That today the second class, and tomorrow there is no class. And the day after tomorrow and the next days we will continue for three theory classes. The total five theory classes you have, two classes we continued, and from day after tomorrow we will start the third, fourth, and fifth class continuously. So it will be on 24th, 25th, and 26th. Okay, so it is 22 today, 22 of May. So tomorrow we do not have any class, right? So from day after tomorrow, on day after tomorrow, you will join at 3 p.m., 3 o'clock. It will continue till 4:30. And the rest of the days, the timing will be as it is. It is shared to you all. Okay. See, okay. Anything you want to ask me? Okay, so today we just explained we discussed few questions. We discussed the types of data, and we discussed the what is sampling, probability and non-probability sampling, and the types of probability sampling. Okay, so in the next class we'll continue the non-probability sampling categories and all other topics that I will cover. Okay, so right. So any doubt regarding today's class, anything want to ask or everything is perfect?
Ma, I have a question.
Yes.
In the case of you made mention of homogeneous while you were explaining.
Yeah, homogeneous. Okay, you want to know about homogeneous value, right? See, homogeneous value means if you are categorizing the data into a particular group, that means all the data in a particular group should be of similar characteristics. Okay, so that's why I'm saying the data. The present in a strata are homogeneous. That means the data, if I'm putting in strata 1, the all the data that belong to that particular strata should be of similar characteristics, should be of similar features, that should share. So that's why in that regard, so these are homogeneous data.
Okay. Then the second question, Ma.
Yes.
When you made mention of sampling bias. So,
Sampling bias, yes.
yes, as in, do we
Okay.
need to
See,
be, as in,
ha,
how can we, since the way I perceive it as if sampling bias is something that should be avoided, right?
okay, okay. See one
As
thing.
in,
I
if we should avoid sampling bias, as in,
okay.
how can we avoid it, for example?
Okay. See, sampling bias, I told you that whenever you are collecting data, suppose you have variety of data of demographically dispersed data, you are collecting various category of data are stored in a particular place and you are collecting samples from those data. So in that case, you can have the sample that is not appropriate for your data analysis. So we can, if there is sampling bias, that means there is something wrong when you are collecting sample which can badly affect your result, your data analysis. We can do one thing, that whenever we just collect the data, okay, so we have, first of all, we should apply certain methodology. Suppose certain softwares are there, like R programming is there, SAS technology is there, SPSS technology, there are so many softwares are there through which we can just find out the value that is appropriate, that is not a redundant one, that is the most accurate value for our data analysis. So whenever in practical, when in practically we'll collect the data, right? So when you will collect the data, we will not go directly and collect the data. We will apply some technology, we will apply the methods or the software. Suppose using R programming language, I have to collect the sample. Okay, so I have to collect analyze the past data so that I can collect the sample or I can analyze the data. So whenever I will apply R programming language, it will just find out that whether the data is appropriate for my analysis, whether the data is already taken, whether the data is duplicated value, or the data that is present, it is not appropriate for my studies. It has the null value, or it is not, it has the wrong value, that I shouldn't consider that. Okay, so various methods are there, various technologies are there, whether when we will actually apply algorithms on the data, at that case we can just purify, or we can just avoid the sampling bias at any extent, right?
Okay, Ma, suppose I want you to draw some inferences about the population of a whole country. You see, in this case, but my population is very large,
Okay.
and maybe I'm residing in only one part or one region of the country, and I cannot be able to cover all the other regions in the country. So, how am I going to avoid sampling bias in this situation?
Okay, see, that I explained, that suppose whenever you are just there to collect the sample, suppose you are taking the secondary data, because when you will collect the entire population in a country, you won't go to the entire country to collect the data. Okay, you won't go to all the person, you won't go to door by door, you won't want to go to city by city to collect the data. So of course you will go for the secondary data, because whenever we do research, if we are applying our research, or if our research is for the entire population, it is generalized. Okay, you are getting the point, generalized, it is generalized. So in that case, we want to go to collect the data. If our research is limited to a particular demography, to a particular area, then it is possible to go there to interact with the people to collect the data. But if our research is very broad, very vast, that means it needs to contain the contents of the entire country, so it is not possible for us to go to every place to collect the data. So in that case, we prefer the secondary data. So whenever we prefer the secondary data, we suppose we collected the secondary data and we are just taking the samples. Okay, so this is the case that you are saying me. So whenever we just collect the samples, in that case you should, suppose you are doing a research, suppose you are doing a means you are doing any analysis one, you have to use the MATLAB, you have to use the R, you have to use SPSS technology, various software suites, by using any methodology. Okay, so whenever you just work on using, okay, let me, when you use the entire population, you will check, you will collect the data. So in that case you have to use the software, right? Suppose you are doing a research, you will apply the MATLAB, you will just use the MATLAB to check, or you will use the confusion matrix to check everything is going well or not. Okay, so you will use the R programming language, you will use the SPSS technology, you will use various technology to check that when you are collecting the sample, you are using that for analysis purpose, everything is going well or not. You have to generate a model, and you have to check the collected samples, that you have newly collected the samples. You have to just map your collected samples to the already framed model, to know that there is not any biasness, there is not any error in your sample, and your data is appropriate for the analysis purpose, right?
It's okay, Ma. Understood.
Oh, okay. Okay, am I clear?
Very clear.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Okay, so I think it's let me quit the day after tomorrow. We'll start at 3, right? So everyone just keep in mind that the day after tomorrow class will start from 3 to 4:30. So be means join at the proper time. Okay, so be on time on day after tomorrow's class. So thank you everyone, thank you so much.